Hello BookTube. For this Tag Thursday, I'm going to be doing the somewhat autobiographical book tag. This tag was created by Book Time with Elvis, and it's been around for a bit. There was some work that needed to be done. You need to kind of research the bestseller lists. Excuse me. And it took me a while to get around to doing that. I know I mentioned earlier this week that I was going to try to do tags every day this week, since I am buried with tags. Unfortunately, the tag I was going to do on Tuesday, the Booker Bingo tag, although I'm not entirely sure why it's bingo, it has nothing to do with bingo. But anyway, it's going to take a little bit more thought than I originally thought it was. So I'm going to come back and do that one maybe tomorrow or next week. And then yesterday I was going to do the Bookish First Times tag, but I need to kind of rethink one of my answers for that tag. So that one might be tomorrow or again sometime next week. So in the meantime, let's get on with the somewhat autobiographical book tag. Question number 1. What was the number 1 best-selling book, fiction and or nonfiction, on the day you were born? Have you read them? So, doing some digging. Wikipedia is a wonderful thing. Oh, that's 2020. Okay, here we go for the New York Times bestseller list, fiction of 1983. For my birthday would be Poland by James Michener. This book seems to have been on the bestseller list at least from like September 11th through November 6th before being supplanted for about a month by Pet Sematary by Stephen King before coming back to end the year on the bestseller list. I've never read Poland. I have only read one James Michener novel or bailed on it, and that would be Texas. So a few years ago, before I really discovered BookTube, I had a blog. And I still do, but I don't. It's kind of defunct blog. And I got into a conversation with a regular commenter. I'd comment on his blog posts and he'd comment on mine. And somehow I got to thinking about historical fiction. That at the time I'm like, wow, why read historical fiction when you could just go read natural history, and which would be a whole lot more interesting. But I was convinced to try historical fiction. So I made a list of 20 historical fiction novels. I know it's excessive. I have that habit. I mean, Around the World in 80 books, America 20. I really need to tamp down my project TBRs, but I never do. Anyway, getting back to the point. So I had come up with 20 novels of historical fiction, and Texas was one of them. And I want to say I bailed within the first chapter or two. I mean, it really didn't grab my attention. And honestly, Big Wonderful Thing by Stephen Harrigan is much more fun to read. So anyway, no, I haven't read Poland by James Michener. So for nonfiction, which I think should be this one over here, yes. So, the nonfiction bestseller for my birthday, which was also on the list from October 30th through the end of the year, or near enough, is Motherhood, the Second Oldest Profession by Emma Bombeck. Yeah, it's Bombeck. My eyesight stinks. I haven't read this one either, and I don't know much about it. I can't click on the link, so anyway. So, no for either one. So, so moving on to question number 2. What are some books, series, or standalone that immediately spring to mind when you think of your childhood? Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. The Last of the Really Great Wangadoodles by Julie Andrews. I think those two really spring to mind, as well as A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, which in a Great Illustrated Classics edition I read and just devoured in one day, and really got me loving that, just sitting down and just reading all day. Question number 3. School days are the best days of your life, apparently, but there you were forced to read some books you maybe wouldn't have chosen for yourself. Which did you enjoy? So, we really weren't forced to start reading like books, besides selections, which are generally hit or miss, until 7th grade. And that was the first novel I remember reading in class as an assignment. And that was Where the Red Fern Grows by, I'm blanking on the name. I will, in the books mentioned at the end of the video, I will, if I remember to, because these questions are long, I'll mention his name. I kind of liked Where the Red Fern Grows. Also quite liked Yellow Raft and Blue Water by Louise Erdrich's ex-husband. Leave his name down below too. Quite enjoyed that one. The Shakespeare plays, quite enjoyed. So I've generally enjoyed what I've read as a side reading. Although once I got into college, again, hit or miss. Not everything's going to appeal to everybody. And I tend to prefer more modern, contemporary works to earlier works. Although, to be honest, I actually preferred my college days to my school days. I had a lot more fun in college than I did in high school. Anyway, question number 4. Were you independent or part of a pack at school? Did you join the reading fads of the day or do your own thing? I was pretty independent. I never really had many friends or friends at all. I really didn't participate with school activities. I just went and was there, participated when I needed to, and then went home. I didn't really become more engaged until college, which again was a complete blast. As far as reading fads go, no. There really was never any sort of reading fads that I can think of. I kind of I never really caught that Harry Potter wave. In my reading, I was a little bit too old. It would have been just starting when I would have been the right age for it, but never really any sort of faddish reading or kind of joining in. No. Question number 5. As you moved into your turbulent teens, can you remember your first experience encountering sex in a book? Yes. I want to say it was The Spy Who Loved Me by Ian Fleming, which is weird. Largely because it's told from the perspective of the Bond girl. So it's sort of a bit more of a romance or a... I mean, it's a completely different novel than the Bond novels are for the most part. So, yeah. Question number 6. What were some of the first kinds of nonfiction you encountered? The encyclopedia. We had a encyclopedia set when we were younger, which I would go through every now and again. And then there was, I want to say I read a biography of Catherine the Great and Elizabeth I when I was like in 5th or 6th grade that I really enjoyed. But I didn't really get into nonfiction until college. So question number 7. Whose bookshelf was more fun to raid, Mum's or Dad's? Dad did not read. He had no books at all that I can remember. That was not something he was into. And my mom, she tends to prefer romance novels. Although that said, I did kind of sneak some of her romance novels, which was it actually The Spy Who Loved Me then? Yeah. Could it have been one of Mom's romances? The question to the first time I encountered sex in a book. Maybe. No, I want to say it was still The Spy Who Loved Me. I'm still pretty sure it was that. And then Mom's romances would have been like a year or so later. Because I think I had a habit of wanting to put her books out on a little bookcase or mirror bookcase thing, you know. And I kind of went to thumbing through it, so I think that's what happened. Okay. Question number 8. How diverse is your library? See the genres below. Okay, this is going to be a while. Antiquarian, rare, and collectible, none. Biography, I have a few, not many. Mostly they are bundled with history, because I consider them history or with other kind of genres, groupings. Most of the biographies I have are of Alexander the Great. Business, finance, and law, none. Calendars, diaries, and annuals. I have one calendar in the kitchen, and you only need one calendar. Children's books. I have 3. The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and the Alice books by Lewis Carroll. Comics and graphic novels or collections. I have none. I used to have a pretty good collection of comic books, some of the collected editions, and quite a good starter manga collection. Had some Fairy Tail, Naruto, Bleach, Full Metal Alchemist, Death Note. But I ended up sort of trading them in for store credit, and I've regretted it. I do regret it. I kind of want to get back into not necessarily collecting American comic books, but more manga. But it is rather daunting, as much as how many volumes a lot of the manga series have, particularly since I do like shonen manga, and they can run to the dozens of volumes. Computing and internet, none. Not a genre I'm that interested in. Crafts, hobby, and home. I have a small collection of art books, a few drawing books, mostly pastel. I am a occasional pastelist, which pastels are little sticks of pigment that you can use to paint and draw with. Crime, thriller, and mystery. I have a pretty good Agatha Christie omnibus collection. I have some Bond novels. I have some John Le Carré. Education, studies, and teaching, none. Erotica. I have 4. And yes, they are all terrible. Fiction. Which I'm not entirely sure if it's just general fiction, the more literary fiction, but yeah, I have a little bookcase of them over here. Food and drink. I don't have any books about it. I mean, I have some cookbooks. I have a small cookbook collection. Kind of in the mood to get some more. Foreign language study and reference, none. Health, family, and lifestyle. I have a few. In a way, maybe. History. I have a pretty good little collection in the beginning over here, which will eventually come over into here too. And I have some more that will be showing up in my April book haul. I want to say right now, history is the second largest contingent in my library. Horror, I have a few. I have like one Stephen King book that's, no, 2 that are horror. The Stand and Christine. And then I have his sort of weird epic fantasy series, a few books in that. I don't think I have any other like purely horror novels though. Humor, none. Although I do want some Molly Ivins books. LGBTQ plus books. Yes, it's not as well, because I kind of got rid of some, kept a lot. So I have quite a few in the fiction section. I'm aiming to get more in science fiction and fantasy. And that's what I'm looking for. When I was an English Lit major, one of my areas of expertise would have been, if I had gone on to gotten my doctorate and began teaching or scholarship, would have been LGBTQ plus literature. So, I mean, I do have quite a few. Would like to add some more as I get around to it. Mind, body, and spirit, none. Music, stage, and screen, none. I used to have one, Acting Gay or Still Acting Gay by John M. Clum, which was quite good. poetry, drama, and criticism. Why are these three joined together? I have a poetry collection, which I'm aiming to increase. I have an even more poetry drama collection. I can't think of a good, yeah, with D, but I think I've got like Shakespeare and John Webster and Oscar Wilde and an anthology of gay and lesbian drama. In criticism, I have, if we're talking about literary criticism and theory, I have two big anthologies of literary theory and criticism. I also have Anatomy of Criticism by Northrop Frye. I used to have a bigger collection. I had a few books by Foucault, Raymond Williams, I think an introduction or two into queer theory, which not my favorite genre in literary theory. And I kind of waffle back and forth between wanting to increase my literary criticism collection such that it is, or just it's a part of my life that's better left in the past. Politics, philosophy and social sciences, none really, or that isn't added into like history or other genre collections. Reference, none. That's what Wikipedia is for. Religion and spirituality, none unless you count Greek mythology. Romance. I have, I think, one. Romance is a genre that I've never really gotten into. I should try to make a concerted effort to really try to get into it, but it just doesn't really appeal to me. But I think I might have one. The Last Romeo by Myers, I think probably could count. Or not. It's a terrible book, regardless. School books. None. Well, I mean, I do have some of the textbooks I had. Obviously, the theory anthologies. I got them for class. There are quite a few others. As an English lit major, I would have various books for class, so I still have some of those. Some of those I've since gotten rid of, but quite a few I still have. Science fiction and fantasy. Science fiction and fantasy is the bulk of my collection. I have 2 small bookcases. I have 3 mid-sized ones, I'd say, and 1 monstrosity that my brother built me. So, science fiction and fantasy form the bulk of my collection. Fantasy being the bulk of that. Science, nature, and math. Not as much as I would like. I have a few. I think I have... I'm going to say 2. And I want some more. I used to actually have quite a bit more when I was younger. I had there was some books from Dover. I think I had like a book on ferns, a book on hawks, a book on spiders, a book on algebra. I was a weird kid. I've gotten rid of those, but sometimes I wonder, although maybe not. They were quite technical. Scientific, technical, and medical. None. Sports, hobbies, and games. None. Travel and holiday, none. University textbooks. What really counts as a university textbook? I mean, again, I do have a few works that I was assigned for class. The two theory anthologies. I think one of the history books might have been geared towards like a class setting, but yeah. Young adult. I have one for sure. More Than This by Patrick Ness. Although you could probably argue quite a bit of what's coming up as sort of adult science fiction and fantasy really probably is more YA than it is properly adult science fiction and fantasy. So question number 9. What types of books do you find difficult to discuss? Erotic. Definitely erotic. Question number 10. In what way does your life experiences and emotions shape your choice of reading? I don't really... I don't think it does really. Maybe... drawing me more to science fiction and fantasy than, say, maybe other genres. History compared to other genres of nonfiction. Question number 11. In much the same way as your taste for food changes, so perhaps does your taste in books. How would you say your own reading tastes have evolved over the decades? So, basically, I think I've gone through this a few times. So, once I got out of reading children's books, Last of the Really Great Wongadoodles, the Little House books, so on and so forth. Fudge and Super, was Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing, Super Fudge. Once I sort of transitioned to more adult reading when I was about 12, I started off with detective fiction, and that lasted for a few years. Kind of also moved into thriller, and then I kind of got into science fiction and fantasy, and that's largely been my primary sort of reading sort of genre. That's what I've enjoyed reading the most. I have enjoyed reading general fiction or literary fiction, however you want to define that genre, intermittently, although my enjoyment of that genre is considerably less than science fiction and fantasy. Also, I've started to really get into more history, and particularly relatively recently, I've really fallen in love with reading history. So, yeah. Question number 12. Unfortunately, we all feel down at certain times. Have you got a go-to book to raise you back up? I wish I did. I've been in the doldrums for quite a few months now, and I've been trying to find a book to sort of drag me out of it, even though sometimes it doesn't quite work. I probably should do some rereading, but there's always the fear that if I do reread something, that I'm going to be considerably harsher to it on a reread. This happened last year when I reread Charming Billy by Alice McDermott. I loved it the first time I read it in 2017. Coming back to it in 2020, I'm like, what exactly did I see in it? I mean, I am not entirely sure I quite see the appeal anymore. And that doesn't happen rather frequently with me. Although I'm hoping I might get a chance to read City of Lost Fortunes or Radiance, because those two really sort of, I think, do pick me up. Question number 13. If you have to choose one book or author to represent each decade of your life, who or what would they be? The book should be ones you read in that decade, not necessarily published in that decade. Well, I'm not entirely sure I read any... Wait, let me reread the question. Okay. So in the 1980s, I think maybe some picture books, but I'm not entirely sure I quite remember anything I've read except for maybe like Stone Soup. And I don't even know if when that was published. But like, say, Stone Soup or True Story of the Three Little Pigs. Although that one might have actually been in the 90s. For the 90s, I would say Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim. And the 2000s, The 2000s, maybe A Storm of Swords by George R. Martin. For the 2010s, These Truths by Joe Lepore. And the 2020s, well, we're a little ways in. For that one, maybe I could go with Post Wall, Post Square by Kirstina Spohr. Not entirely sure if any of that really makes any sense, but there we are. Question number 14. Of course, everyone is entitled to their own opinions, but how do you feel when people say reading is boring? What would you say in defense of reading? I just ignore them and read. Easiest thing to do. Question number 15. What was the number one best-selling book on the day of your most recent birthday? Fiction and or nonfiction. Have you read them? Okay, so the best-selling book fiction when I was for my last birthday in 2020 was A Time for Mercy by John Grisham, which I'm assuming must have been a repeat somewhere earlier on in the year, because I'm pretty sure that would have a link to it. I haven't read it. I've never really gotten on with John Grisham. I think I tried The Firm when I was in my detective fiction phase, and I didn't get on with it. So, and I haven't felt any sort of compulsion or need to revisit him. Which I do think, like the really popular writers, like I really don't have any sort of kind of need to read them, except for maybe in science fiction and fantasy. There's a bit of I probably should be familiar with them, but yeah, like John Grisham, I have no desire to read him. Excuse me. So for nonfiction, the number one best-selling book at the time was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, his memoir autobiography, which I have not read, though I probably ought to get to at some point. And then, of course, the week before was cast by Isabel Wilkerson, which I do want to get to at some point. So, let's get on with... Oh, and that rounds out the questions. So, if you would like to do this tag, consider yourselves tagged. And, oh my goodness gracious, I have almost tied Steve's video. Yikes. Okay, anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and sign up for now. I might have a tag video up tomorrow. I don't know. But definitely I will be back tomorrow with a weekly read. So until then, BookTube, thank you. Have a great afternoon. Stay safe. And I am so sorry for this incredibly long and probably bloviating video. Until tomorrow, have a great afternoon.